That must be a key security concern, especially, Steve, as we have this G7 foreign ministers gathering in Japan right now.
Yeah, I think this attack on Prime Minister Kishida kind of underscores the security element to these meetings that are coming for the G7. Obviously, the foreign ministers starting their gathering in Kurosawa, the resort town, yesterday. They'll be going on today, but also early next month, you're going to have the finance ministers up in Niigata, and then also a week after that, the leaders summit of the G7 down in Hiroshima. So it does underscore that security is going to be a top subject, not just because of Ukraine and Taiwan, but also now domestically. It just kind of is going to tighten things up at these meetings. But obviously, we're more than a year after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We've had subsequently, of course, a meeting of minds, if you will, between Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin in Moscow. That will be on the agenda, as will, of course, the increased tension over Taiwan. We've just completed, the PLA has just completed exercises around Taiwan again. So there's those concerns, obviously, as the G7 discussions will obviously be kind of focused on Asia this time around, as Japan will play host to these G7 meetings. You're seeing Antony Blinken there and others yesterday in the opening dinner of the G7 foreign ministers meetings. But again, there's also potentially, well, the word I've been hearing from these meetings already is downplaying. Everyone's downplaying concerns within the bloc, within the G7, that there might be some rifts on the policies towards China. You had Emmanuel Macron, the French president, recently visiting Beijing. He was talking about how the EU should not get caught in the middle of disputes between China and the United States. That raised concerns that there is diverging opinions about the way forward with Europe and the United States towards China. But we also had the German foreign minister last week in Beijing, Ms. Baerbock, and she essentially had more terse comments towards Beijing about any escalation in the Taiwan Strait could potentially be a horror scenario. So again, we had the EU foreign ministry or foreign policy ahead downplaying that there's any rifts within the EU on policy towards China. He essentially is saying that the policy is the same among the EU members. The wording might be different. Also, we had Antony Blinken before leaving for the Kurosawa and the G7. Antony Blinken also downplayed concerns that the European members of the G7 potentially are concerned about the intelligence leak out of the United States. Blinken essentially said that he's got no indication from members that there is disunity on that subject.